Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about functions. And the first thing we need to understand about functions is relations. Okay, so relations are a set of ordered pairs, which are something like you would find on a graph. So the first number in an ordered pair is called the domain, and that is your x. And the second number is called the range. So we're going to look at a couple of examples here. So we can write a relation using a table just like this one that we have up here. And in this case, the vehicle is going to be our domain. So I'm going to highlight that, or our x. Okay. So that is our domain. That can also be called your independent variable. Okay, so that's your domain or your x. Now on the bottom here, we have our range or our y values. So that is what we call our dependent variable. And that's because the number of wheels here is dependent on the car and not the other way around. Okay. So here we would write these just like this: car 4, bike 2, motorcycle 2, boat 0, tricycle 3. And in this case, the vehicle type is our domain, and the second number or the number of wheels is our range. Now, thinking about a vending machine, we're going to focus a lot on input and output. So when you're thinking about this, you can think about like a vending machine. So you can choose, in this scenario, you can choose crackers, chips, or candy. So you put in 75 cents and out pops a Hershey bar. So there's a relationship between the amount of money you're putting in and what comes out. So that's exactly kind of what we're thinking about when it comes to functions. So you're going to put something in and get something out. So here's a relation that we're going to just call B. And here we've got 4 different ordered pairs. So in this case, our domain is 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the 4 numbers that all came first in their ordered pair. Those are the x values. Those are your domain. And then the range is 4, 6, 8, and 10, or all the y values in those ordered pairs. So we have the domain in the range. Now, when we're thinking about that on a graph, your your x axis is where all your inputs will go, and that is your domain. And your y axis is where all your outputs would go, and that is your range. So y-axis up and down, that is output, and x-axis horizontal across is your input. Okay? So remember, and that is your independent variable right here, and your dependent on the y. So let's talk about the terms independent variable and dependent variable. So independent variables are your input values for your functions, and dependents are the output. Okay, so like if I were to put $1 in a vending machine and then get a candy bar out, the dollar would be my independent variable, and the chocolate bar would be my dependent variable, because what comes out of that vending machine is dependent on what goes into that vending machine. So what is a function, or what a function is basically, is where every input only has one output. So outputs can repeat, but inputs cannot. So that means when you're writing your domain, if you see any number repeat, it's not a function. Okay? So every input has Every output has a different input. Okay, so we're going to go through these and we're going to talk about how we can find them. So remember, we are looking for an input with only one output. So on a graph, we use something called the vertical line test. And that is basically like you'll be given a graph and you're just going to start drawing vertical lines. And the way that this works is if it only hits the graph once, then it passes the test. So on this example here, you see each of my lines only touches the graph one time. So that is a function and passes the vertical line test. Down here, I'm going to do the same thing. So I only hit once, only once, only once. So that means that that too is a function. Now let's look at this one down here. We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to draw my vertical lines and we're going to test to see if this is a function. And as you can see, every single line hits it twice, right here and right here, right here, right here. So that is not a function. So now I'm going to do some examples of how to identify functions in tables and graphs. And we're going to start with this first one right here. So let's look at our domain. We have Coke, Coke, Mellow Yellow, Coke, Mr. Pibb, Big Red, Big Red. This is not a function because if you notice I have Coke and my output is Coke, but down here I have Coke again and my output is Mr. Pibb. So these are two inputs, or one input with two different outputs. So that is not a function, okay? Over here, I notice that I have one twice. So let's see, because if I have the same output twice, then yeah, that can still be a function. But looking here, I have 16 and 32, both as outputs of positive 1. So that is not a function because that is the same input with two different outputs. Now my third table over here is a function, and that is because I have all different inputs and all different outputs. So that is a function. Looking down here right off the bat, I see I have 2 and I have an output of 7 or 10. So I already know that is not a function. That is not a function because 2 here has 2 different outputs. And that cannot happen. Each input should only have one output. Looking here, I see 1 only has one output, 4 only has one, 6 only has one, and 8 only has one. So that is a function. Over here, 2 has an output, 4 has one, 5, 8, 9. They all have only one output, so this is also a function. Now, for our graphs, we're going to do the vertical line test. I'm going to draw some straight lines. So each line I draw only hits once, so that is a function. Let's do the same thing here. Okay, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and 1. So that is also a function. And when you're doing this, you only need to draw about 3 or 4 lines. You don't have to do a whole bunch. So here, already 1, 2, 3. That is not a function because my line hit it more than once. So that is not a function. Same here, 1, 2. The line hit it twice. That is not a function. So now we've got some points down here. And I'm going to redraw these tables because they got kind of messed up. So I'm going to take all my x's and go ahead and put them in a column. So here I've got -5, 3, +1, and then -5 again. And then my y values, I have -1, +3, +2, and +7. I see right here that -5 repeats. I'm going to check to see what their outputs are. And it's -1 and 7. So that means I have one input with two different outputs. So no, this is not a function. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I have -3, -1, +3, and then -2. And so I'm going to go ahead and write all my y values. So 1, -1, 0, -4. I see that I don't have any inputs that repeat and all my outputs are different. So yes, this is a function.